a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like you've never seen.
He wouldn't know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So
I was
Wait a minute.
raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding, and his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support.
Look,
He has no law enforcement
that's not
support.
true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
not. Look,
All right, who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead.
Look.
Think. We have time.
we don't have time to do
No,
anything.
think
All right.
Name one law enforcement group that came out and
I
supported
think, gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to take back the
There
moderator's
aren't. I don't
role,
think there are any.
and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted. And anyone who commits it
But
should
you've
be
never
prosecuted.
called for the people,
He's never
the
said
leader, excuse me, sir, you have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to call
Because
and bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, really?
Here's the
But
thing.
I sent
sir,
in the
wait, I
U.S.
asked him a
Marshals
question.
to get the killer of the young man in the middle of the street, and they shot him.
No,
And for 3
Mr.
days,
President Trump,
Portland
President
wouldn't do
Trump,
anything.
please
I asked
interrupt
them,
him.
the U.S. Marshals,
President
they
Trump.
took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all
I
about.
don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said
She said that.
that.
And so here's
All right.
here's the point.
Go
The
ahead.
point is that that's what he is, keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline on the fire constantly, and every single solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm gonna give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly
I
criticized.
have to answer his
No,
statement.
you have
His statement?
repeatedly,
Wait,
you have
just one
repeatedly, no,
second.
you've been talking
You
back
made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to
you know,
end it.
sir.
I would love to end it, and
You
we
know, if
would
you wanna
very-
switch seats,
We
we
would
could,
very quickly.
we can do that, but I'm,
Said
no,
that the
I'm,
National Guard would be over, there'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they don't want to accept the National Guard.
you have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as
Okay.
we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared
to
to
do that,
specifically
but
do it?
I
Well, go
would
ahead,
say,
sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you
If
saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it, do it, say it.
You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead,
supremacists
call him.
and
Who would you
right
like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His
This
own
is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said,
is a left-wing
threatening
problem.
white
Go ahead, sir.
supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his
It's an idea.
His
Okay.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well,
we're
then
gonna,
you know what?
no, we're done, sir. We're moving on to the next, we're
Everybody-
moving.
But a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is bad.
administration tells you the truth is a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas that are.
Antifa is a dangerous
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you gotta be
Biden
careful
records.
with them. They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him.
Don't forget to
308,000
subscribe and
people
like
died because they didn't have proper
and
health care. He was a
pindutin
mess.
ang bell.
And we now got a
Pabudlo TV.
91% approval rating at the VA. Our vets,
You
we
choose.
take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court judges, justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you, because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term.
Fine, sir.
300 judges, it's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy. and he caused the recession with regard to being weaker. The fact is that I've gone head to head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got
No,
$3.5 million.
That's right. And by the way,
Mr.
my
President,
son.
wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word. Can you add back
No,
He's
I'm
a
not
person
asking.
that's
That was
been
a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes, you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot. And the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent
Are you talking
Mike
about
Hill.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're
I
talking
don't know.
about
I don't know, Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah, you know Bo.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He
for
wasn't
cocaine
dishonorably.
use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you
None
became
of that
vice
is
president, he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made a
son,
fortune.
my son,
And he didn't have a
my
job.
son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why
I'm
was he
proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right,
But he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right.
tens of
He
millions
was
of dollars.
given
That
tens
is
of
totally,
millions of
that is
President Trump,
totally
President Trump,
discredited.
you've already been
Totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about.
Okay mga kaibigan, kayo na po ang maghusga.
As the moderator, sir,
Mahirap
I'm gonna
pala.
make a judgment
Tatakbo
call.
tayo, wala tayong
$3.5 million
grupo.
on the mayor of Moscow.
Let's talk about